What if the downfall of every great empire in history wasn't an accident, a war, or a stroke of bad luck? What if it was a formula, a hidden code embedded in human nature that predicts with terrifying accuracy when a superpower will rise, when it will rule, and when it will inevitably collapse? For centuries, historians believed the fate of nations was chaotic and unpredictable. But they were wrong. There is a pattern, a sequence of 7 stages that has played out time and time again, from the sun-baked stones of Rome to the fog-drenched streets of London. And the most unsettling part? This ancient code reveals that the United States is not in the beginning, or even the middle, of its story. It has already entered stage 6, the final stage before the end. This isn't a prophecy, it's a historical blueprint, a countdown that has already begun. And we are living through the last quiet moments before the clock runs out. It all started with a man who saw what no one else did. Sir John Glubb was a British general, an explorer, and a historian who spent decades living among the ruins of ancient civilizations. As he studied the rise and fall of the Assyrians, the Persians, the Romans, and the British, he stumbled upon a chilling discovery. Empires, he realized, seemed to have an expiration date. Despite their vast differences in technology, religion, and geography, their lifespans as a dominant power were shockingly consistent, about 250 years. From their initial explosive growth to the final, bitter implosion, the pattern held. It was like a biological clock, ticking down to a predetermined end. Glubb called it the fate of empires, a predictable cycle driven not by invading armies, but by a decay that grows from within. It begins with an age of pioneers, an explosion of courage and innovation. Then comes an age of commerce, of immense wealth and influence. Then an age of intellect, of art and science. But then the rot sets in, an age of decadence, a time of pessimism, division, and financial ruin. Every single empire had followed this path. And what his findings revealed was that America, born in 1776, was entering that same dangerous 250-year window. But that was just the beginning of the story. The real proof lies in the stages. Every great nation begins with a fire in its belly, a sense of shared purpose that makes the impossible seem achievable. For America, this was the post-World War II era, a generation that had survived the Great Depression and defeated 2 of the most fearsome military machines in history, came home not to rest, but to build. They created the modern middle class, laid highways across the continent, and put a man on the moon. They believed in themselves and in their country. It was the age of pioneers, reborn. But victory is a slow-acting poison. Soon, that sense of purpose curdled into arrogance. The nation began to see itself not as a leader, but as the world's indispensable ruler. This led to the age of overreach. Instead of building at home, America began policing the world. Decades-long wars in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq drained trillions of dollars, and more importantly, the nation's focus and unity. Each conflict was sold as essential, but together they formed a pattern of a nation stretched too thin, fighting shadows on the other side of the world, while its own foundations began to crack. The empire was trading its long-term health for short-term dominance, but the most catastrophic damage wasn't happening on the battlefield. It was happening in the one place that holds it all together, the treasury. For an empire addicted to spending, reality is the ultimate enemy. And on August 15, 1971, the United States decided to divorce itself from reality. On that day, President Nixon announced that the US dollar would no longer be backed by gold. In an instant, the very definition of money was changed. It was no longer a claim on a real, tangible asset. It was now a promise backed by nothing but faith in the government that issued it. It was the ultimate blank check. This single act unlocked the door to the next stage, the debt spiral. Without the discipline of gold, the government could print and borrow with no real limit. And it did. The national debt, which had been manageable for decades, exploded. Today it stands at an incomprehensible $34 trillion, a number that grows by $1 trillion every 100 days. It's a fatal addiction. It's like a family that stops earning and starts living entirely on credit cards, throwing lavish parties and buying expensive cars, all while knowing that one day the collectors will come knocking. This is the stage where an empire consumes its own future to pay for the present. The currency is debased, the savings of its citizens are silently stolen through inflation, and the entire system becomes a fragile house of cards, waiting for a single gust of wind to blow it all down. And what happens when the money becomes a lie? The society it's supposed to hold together begins to fall apart. When the economic foundation of a nation rots, the culture is next to go. This is stage 5. Social decay. It's a quiet civil war, fought not with guns but with words, beliefs, and a deepening sense of resentment. A scientist named Peter Turchin calls one of the key drivers of this stage elite overproduction. Essentially, a society begins producing far more highly educated and ambitious people than there are positions of power for them to fill. This creates a ruthless, zero-sum competition where political rivals see each other not as opponents, but as existential enemies. The symptoms are all around us. A 24/7 news cycle that profits from rage and division. Social media algorithms that push us into ideological echo chambers. A nation where two neighbors can look at the exact same set of facts and come to two completely different and hostile conclusions. We've lost a shared sense of reality. The virtues that once defined the nation, hard work, community, sacrifice, are replaced by vanity, victimhood, and perpetual outrage. The empire that once conquered the world now can even agree on what a country is for. This internal fracturing sends a powerful signal to the rest of the world. The giant is wounded. For decades, the world ran on one simple rule: trust in the United States. The US dollar was the global currency. The US military was the global protector. US markets were the safest place to invest. This trust was the invisible pillar holding up America's global dominance. Now that pillar is cracking. This is stage 6, the loss of trust, and it's happening faster than anyone imagined. Nations around the world are starting to quietly prepare for a future where America is no longer in charge. This movement has a name: de-dollarization. For the first time in 50 years, major oil producers like Saudi Arabia are openly discussing selling oil in other currencies, a move that would strike at the very heart of the dollar's power. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is actively building a parallel financial system to challenge American dominance. They are buying gold at record rates, a clear sign they are losing faith in paper promises. Allies who once huddled under America's protection are now questioning its reliability. This is the quietest but most dangerous stage. It's not a loud declaration of war, it's a silent, global recalculation. The world is placing its bets elsewhere, sensing that the empire's credit is running out. You don't have to take a historian's word for it. Perhaps the most terrifying warning comes from a man who deals not in history, but in cold, hard numbers. The billionaire investor, Ray Dalio. Dalio has made a fortune by analyzing data to predict major economic shifts. A few years ago, he turned his powerful computers to a new question: what causes empires to fail? His team studied every major empire of the last 500 years, and his findings were identical to Glob's, but with a terrifying modern precision. Dalio revealed that all collapsing empires show 3 clear signals at the same time. First, they have astronomical levels of debt and are printing huge amounts of money. Second, they have extreme levels of internal conflict and political polarization. And third, they are challenged by a rising external power. Dalio Ayer's warning was stark. The United States is the first country in its history to be flashing bright red on all 3 of these markers simultaneously. The debt is skyrocketing, the political division is at its worst since the Civil War, and China has emerged as a formidable economic and military rival. And coming from a historian is a theory. Coming from one of the world's most successful capitalists, it's a 5-alarm fire. So what comes next? What is stage 7? It's not the Hollywood-style explosion most people imagine. It is the great unraveling. It's the moment the system can no longer support its own weight. It's not one event, but a cascade of failures. It begins when the debt market freezes, because no one wants to buy the bonds of a bankrupt nation. The currency collapses, not overnight, but in a gut-wrenching spiral as global faith evaporates. Supply chains, once a marvel of efficiency, break down, leading to shortages on store shelves. Social order fractures as people, terrified and angry, look for someone to blame. Politics descends into pure vengeance. The institutions that are supposed to manage the crisis, the government, the central bank, the courts, are seen as illegitimate and powerless. This is the point of no return. You can't print faith. You can't pass a law to restore trust. The empire doesn't get conquered. It simply implodes, hollowed out from decades of decay. Rome became ruins. Britain became a museum. The Soviet Union became a memory. And each one of them believed, right up until the end, that they were the exception. The story of history is not a gentle whisper. It's a deafening echo. From Sir John Glubb's 250-year death clock to Ray Dalio's data-driven warnings, the message is the same. The stages are predictable. The patterns are clear. We see the poison of victory leading to overreach. We see the devil's bargain of a currency untethered from reality. We see the civil war of the mind tearing society apart, and we see the world quietly hedging its bets against us. The evidence is not hidden. It's written in our headlines every single day. History has handed us a map, a detailed guide showing exactly where the cliffs are. It shows us the path every great power has walked before, a path that always ends at the same precipice. We are standing at that edge right now. The final, terrifying question is not whether the pattern is real. The question is, are we even looking at the map?